Welcome to another installment of The Goddess Keys, where we unleash and unlock those tools and those jewels to support us with embodying our true essence of being goddess in form. And today's topic is going to be around transcending the sacrifice of the serpent. And it's being initiated for a few reasons. First of all, I've been going through my own genetic path cutting and ancestral healing journey around different serpent lineages and unearthing some things. And then we are in the year of 9, which is the year of the serpent, the year of the snake. And so this is showing up a lot in the collective unconscious in general. And then I also watched Wicked last night, and it left quite an interesting impact on me. I don't really watch a lot of movies these days, but every now and then I'll watch a movie here and there. So I knew I was going to watch Wicked because, background story on me real quick, I have nerded out on Wicked for years and years and years, read the book a couple times, and that's a pretty big commitment. That book is huge. Then listened to the audiobook as well, then went to the stage musical. So I have been invested in that story a lot as growing up. Like, that's been a foundational story that I've gone back to and that I've resonated with. But it wasn't until I watched the movie yesterday, and I waited a while to watch it because I believe that movie came out last year in 2024. And this is spring 2025, so it took me a while to get around to watching it just because I don't really prioritize a lot of Hollywood movies these days just because of the amount of energy harvesting that goes along with them. But I knew I was going to get around to watching Wicked, you know? And so when I'm watching the movie, like, I'm having mixed opinions about it. Like, I think some of it was good, and then some I'm like, I don't know if I liked those adjustments that they made to the original story. But I will say, like, the last half of that movie was awesome, and especially like the last 20 to 30 minutes was like super powerful and was a really visceral experience for me. And it really got me thinking about how karmic transference works, or how false debt works, or this idea of sacrificing somebody, right? And so it really spoke to me around the serpent lineage in particular. Like, because I had seen the Broadway, or actually it wasn't on Broadway, because I saw it in San Francisco, but when I saw the musical, the artist who played the main character, Elphaba, she was not melanated. And I mean, I thought she did fantastic, but there was something about seeing a melanated woman with green skin that just had a visceral, like, DNA reaction for me. And it changed the story. Just her very presence changed the story in a way. And I really do believe that was done on purpose. There was a specific reason and code for it. Because that's one thing about Hollywood. They're really great about giving you the truth, but like mixing it up too, you know? So it looks like it's entertainment or just entertainment, but there's a code that's being distributed. And because it was released so close to this 9 year that we're in, I think that was also done. That was done on purpose as well. And there's a lot of people from ancient serpent lineages right now who are going through the process of retrieving their power, and they're choosing not to be the sacrifice any longer and accessing their Akashic records and all that kind of stuff. And we'll get more into that. Okay. So this isn't really to say, hey, go watch Wicked. But I mean, there was something so powerful. That story has always held a special place in my subconscious, but I was able to put a lot of the pieces together watching it last night. And It's a really great example of how karmic transference and false debt works, if you're looking for a visceral example of that, and specifically around how the serpent has been used as a sacrifice, to the point where it's literally the sacrifice of the serpent has been what the false matrix simulation has been built upon. And I really thought that that Wicked movie did a great example of showing that, and showing how the twisting of narratives can be utilized to sacrifice somebody and make them seem like they're the public enemy number one. And so just a really quick synopsis, just so you can get some insight on what I'm meaning when I'm discussing this, is the main character, Elphaba, who's the wicked one, the wicked witch. Basically, it's talking about her backstory, and maybe she actually wasn't really wicked at all. Maybe she was actually just a defector of the society or the false matrix simulation. It also reminded me, the way they showed the Emerald City, it also reminded me of how they showed the Capitol in that movie. What's that movie called? Hunger Games. It kind of gave me that similar vibe or aspect. Okay, so the person who defects from the norm somehow becomes like public enemy number one in a lot of ways. But what was interesting was that she was groomed at this really elite institution because of her magical skills. But she was groomed so she could be used, right? So she could be used by the powers that were in power to basically siphon from her and energy harvest from her, and all the while she's thinking that she's being chosen and that she's so lucky to be able to be given this opportunity. But really, she was the biggest power, like the main power. Even though she was the most different, even though she was the most rejected, she was actually the most powerful. Okay. And so she was sacrificed because she was so different, but she was also coveted and used for those same differences. And so there's a scene, spoiler alert, I am going to go into some of the stuff. So if you're interested in watching it, maybe you want to stop here, but spoiler alert, she was brought up to the Emerald City to meet the Wizard of Oz and was basically manipulated to cast a spell to support them with forwarding a mission that she was actually completely against. So she was really big on animal rights. And at the time, the Wizard of Oz, even though she didn't know this at the time because this was all kind of being done in the background, but the Wizard of Oz was responsible for the suppression of animals and the criminalization of animals. And she was really big on animal rights, and she really wanted to help the animals and their social condition. And she got manipulated when she got to the Emerald City to make it seem as though she was going to be utilizing her magic for good and for the progress of her social cause, but it actually did the opposite. And, the whole thing was they were basically making her a deal. Like they were wanting her to sell her soul in a lot of ways, like making her an offer that maybe a lot of people couldn't refuse. It's like, hey, you could be the lead sorceress for Oz. You could have so much power. You could be granted so many opportunities if you just play ball. But she wouldn't sacrifice her soul essence to do that. And so she was like, you know what? I'm going to actually go against this. And, that's where that whole Defying Gravity song comes from Wicked, which is like defying the confines. I mean, this is really getting into the false matrix simulation. There's actually some information around gravity in itself is a tool that's utilized to keep us really constricted on the earthly plane. And so I find it really interesting that she's utilizing, I think I'll try defying gravity. Yeah, I think I'll try defying gravity is what she says. Okay. And then, of course, that's when she summons up the power to start flying on a broomstick. And she's literally now she's flying. She's coming into her sorceress powers because she's truly aligning with her soul essence and all that kind of stuff. Was like this huge moment of trauma, was also a very big activation for her. And so on the one way, she's defying gravity because she's literally learning how to fly in this circumstance where she has to make an escape from the Emerald City. But then on the other hand, she's also choosing to break through all of the constructs of what society is telling her that she should do or what is the best choice. And she's choosing to go against that grain. Now, when she does that, she's completely penalized. And then she's an animal maimer, because the spell she cast, she thought she was helping the animals who were monkeys, who were guards. But she ended up giving them wings and maiming them and hurting them. But she didn't know that she was doing that. She got manipulated, right? And, but she didn't know that. And then she finds out that the Wizard of Oz actually has no powers to begin with. So they need to use her. And then her mentor, who was such a loving presence to her for most of the movie, come to find out she's in cahoots with the Wizard of Oz. And then it's actually her mentor who starts twisting the narrative of like, look at her green skin. You can just see the evil in her through her green skin. Look at what she did to these animals. She maimed these animals. And then she tells the animals, look, she maimed you. She's the one. Go get her, So just the way that they're able to twist that narrative. Okay. What does this have to do with the serpent lineage? Outside of her obviously having the green skin. Okay, there's that. There's many, many different ways that the serpent has been sacrificed. Oh my gosh, this could go on for hours around different symbolism of serpent sacrifice and the manifestations that it shows up in different stories, different religious texts, different deities, etc. This could be a long, long conversation. It's not going to be that long, but let's start with, I'm going to give y'all 2 examples. Okay. So the first example I'm going to give you is Lady Justice. Okay. So you have Lady Justice, who is she is a semblance of the legal system. All right. You're going to find Lady Justice on any kind of like court sort of thing, like a courthouse. She's going to be at a courthouse. She's going to be representative of the legal system. Okay. She's going to be at a lot of like municipal buildings, that sort of thing. And you can Google an image of Lady Justice, but essentially she is blindfolded. She's holding up scales and she's standing on a snake. Okay, and then she has a sword. And I'm just looking on Google right now. It says the snake symbolizes evil and corruption. The fact that Lady Justice is standing on the snake indicates that justice prevails over these negative forces. So automatically, like, the snake is only evil. It's just pure evil, and that's that. And this is something that we have time and time again been shown. Of course, we can point to the snake in the Garden of Eden, right? So the snake convinces Eve to eat the apple of knowledge. And really, you could see the snake as being somebody who had a lot of information and who was like, hey, do you want to open your consciousness? Do you want some information too? Do you want to be more than just like a Stepford wife to Adam? Bite this apple of knowledge. But she's cast out. The snake is cast out, and then Eve is cast out because Eve is influenced by this snake. Then you have Lilith, Adam's first wife, who was also cast out as being Adam's first wife because she wanted to be treated as an equal. And one of Lilith's totems is the snake. Okay. So that's another example of that. And the other one I want to give that kind of goes into this idea of sacrifice and the snake is a Vedic deity called Matangi. Okay, so Matangi is one of the 10 Mahavidyas, who are these tantric goddesses, basically. And Matangi governs speech, music, and knowledge. Okay, and she's a very high-ranking deity. And people worship her to acquire supernatural powers, especially like gaining control over enemies or attraction or gaining mastery over the arts or even music. If you think about MIA, that artist MIA, she even had an album dedicated to Matangi. She called it Matangi. But what's interesting about Matangi is she's a very different deity. Now, the Vedic tradition is actually, I mean, if you've ever studied like the working with the 10 Mahavidya, and I don't work with them anymore. I don't venerate any outside deities, to be honest. But, I went through a period where I was initiated through the 10 Mahavidyas and whatnot, and learned some interesting symbolism from them. And I had a particular interest in Matangi, or connection with Matangi. So she's emerald green in color and is very much associated with the serpent. And what's interesting, though, about her in comparison to all the other Mahavidyas is when you're working with the Mahavidyas, like there's a big thing around cleanliness. Like you need to be clean, you need to keep your altar clean, that sort of thing. Like the deities won't work with you if you're not clean. Whereas Matangi is actually associated with pollution, and especially leftover or partially eaten food. So she's considered to be impure a lot of times. So this is a deity where you're supposed to give them like polluted leftover food. And Matangi, I'm like right now on Wikipedia, it says Matangi herself is described as the leftover or residue, symbolizing the divine self that is left over after all things perish. As the patron of leftover food offerings, she embodies inauspiciousness and the forbidden transgression of social norms. If that doesn't symbolize the sacrifice of the serpent right there, come on. Okay, because she's also known as being the outcast and impure. So she's somebody that you're to venerate if you are considered to be outcasted. So she's a deity that works with folks who are outcasted, but they are looking to gain victory within their circumstances and that sort of thing. Okay. And so this is another example of karmic transference, though, and somebody or a deity who represents false debt. Like the pollution could represent karmic residue even. If you are somebody who is experiencing a lot of false karma or false debt, then that means your energetic field can get polluted a lot of times with a lot of miasma or drama or trauma that actually doesn't even belong to you, but it's being pinned on you. You're like being the sacrifice. You're like the fall guy. You're the lamb taken out to slaughter, that sort of thing. Okay. And so Matangi, you could say in so many words that she is a deity that is to support folks who are experiencing that kind of circumstance. Now, I'm not telling you to worship any deity, okay? What I like to say is if you do want to study deities, study them as being certain aspects of your psyche that you might want to integrate. But I'm not suggesting creating an altar or doing any of that kind of stuff, okay? Like you are the altar, your life is the altar. You know what I mean? Like if you want to venerate, then venerate yourself, venerate the divine aspect of yourself. Okay. So, but, a lot of people would consider that to be heathen type thinking, like, oh, you're being too narcissistic. You're putting yourself on the pedestal. Nobody's supposed to be divine. But, that's what you do a lot of times in the false matrix simulation is you give your power away and then you put your divine essence into somebody else. This goes back to the whole wicked analogy. So the Wizard of Oz was supposed to be this bright and shining star. Even the main character, Elphaba, even though she had the true power and the true magnetism and the true magic, she was seeing the Wizard of Oz as being somebody who was going to save her, who was going to give her everything that she always wanted, even though it was already within herself. And that's the way a lot of these religions work. A lot of these religions who would demonize the serpent is you're supposed to give your divinity and your power to an outside force, to a priesthood, for example. And they are supposed to bask within your divine gifts, right? And they're supposed to manipulate your divine gifts and keep you in a subservient state. That was the information that snake was trying to give Eve, was like, hey, look, you don't got to be oppressed. Here, take this information, yo. Like, you might want to get out of this. It's a trap, yo. It's a trap. But, history is told by the victors, right? So those are just some example of the serpent sacrifice. And the reason why I'm titling this download Transcending the Sacrifice of the Serpent is there's a lot of folks who are spiritually activating right now that have certain serpent codes, certain serpent DNA. Well, first of all humans have some, right? Like even the fact that our skin sheds, okay, we have some kind of serpent DNA, but some people have a little extra. I'll just put it like that. But a big piece that you're going to want to do to truly embody the wholeness of your power is you are going to want to clear all sacrifice programs from your field and all demonizations of the serpent that you have internalized. So I'm only talking to a certain population of folks at this time. You will know if you have a special connection with the serpent because it will have appeared to you in some way. Like you will have had a certain experience that has indicated this. Okay, so I'm not going to go into the details of what that might be, but if you know, you know, and I'm talking to you. Okay. A lot of times this is a divine feminine energy, whether or not you are physically feminine or not. The serpent energy is definitely a divine feminine energy. Okay. So all that to say, and I guess another example I'll give of the serpent sacrifice is if you have followed the story of the priestesses of Mami Wata, also known as the Sibyls. Okay, so one of their, outside of the crows, one of their symbols is the serpent as well. Like they were serpent priestesses, okay, and they utilized serpent power and serpent wisdom for their many gifts, okay. Now, what happened is a lot of their temples were taken down, and literally the Vatican City was built on top of the temples of the Sibyls. Okay, so there's still that frequency, that serpent frequency that's being siphoned even in Vatican City to this day. Okay, so there is still that serpent frequency that's powering up even the biggest superpower in the world, and that would be the Vatican. Okay, it runs basically all commerce, all politics. It's gonna point back to the Vatican. Okay, but that frequency, the frequency of the serpent, runs through the Vatican as well. So a lot of that energy of the serpent is being harnessed and siphoned to power up the false matrix simulation. So this goes back to Wicked once again. So here's this powerful serpentine priestess in this story who is having her energy and her powers siphoned to power up the same institutions that she's very much against. Okay, so this is also this is a code that you definitely, if you are somebody who identifies with the serpent or with the serpent lineage, you will want to have alchemized this and make sure that there are no energetic rips, holes, and tears where your energy is being siphoned to power up the same systems that your soul is opposed to. Okay, so that's something else to keep in mind. And your subconscious, really making sure, how do you view the serpent? This is something that I've had to deconstruct within my own consciousness, all the places where I've demonized the serpent, and this programming has, it's been everywhere. Us coming up within the false matrix simulation to see the snake as being dangerous, to see the snake as being evil, to see the snake as being untrustworthy. And you will want to excavate where in your subconscious mind you're holding on to that. And especially if you've been indoctrinated in a lot of these religions, that's just going to be natural. But you will want to retrieve your energy from that, because what will happen is your subconscious beliefs will be used against you so that you continue to be the sacrifice, because somewhere in your subconscious mind, you think that you are supposed to be the sacrifice because there's a part of you that's evil. There's a part of you that's wrong. That was another thing that came up in the Wicked story. There was a lot of trauma that the main character had had internalized and she felt like she was wrong. She felt like she should be sacrificed, So that was a part of her story that she also needed to alchemize in order to fully embody her power. So the next thing I want to go into is like, well, why would you want to embody the power of the serpent? How can that support you in the times to come? If you are somebody who has experienced issues related to narcissistic projection, and once again, that energy of being the sacrifice, that's all about narcissistic projection. So taking that wicked concept, the main character was basically sacrificed, and all of the evil that the actual political powers were doing was being transferred onto this serpentine priestess. Okay. And she was the evil one. And this is, this was the powers that be. This was their way of absolving themselves of their sins, was doing the energetic transference so that they didn't have to hold that in their energy field. That's a big way that this closed loop artificial simulation has worked on. And a big thing is, if you believe that, then it stays within your energy field. But if you do the work to alchemize and know that it's not wrong to be who you are, and you're powerful, and you're going to retrieve your power, then that energy and that transference goes back to the sender. It has nothing to stick to. Okay, so that's a big way to arm yourself against narcissistic projection, mind control, and hive mind programming. So a lot of the ways that certain people are oppressed in the false matrix simulation is through the hive mind. It's that herd mentality. And we see this a lot also in that Wicked movie, that it's really easy for the masses of people to see Elphaba as being the wicked witch because there was a connection to the hive mind. It's like if the queen bee or the commander says, hey, this person is evil, put all your hatred towards this person, then it's like the hive follows, okay? There's no critical thinking skills and all that kind of stuff. But if you can tap into the serpentine wisdom, you can transcend the hive mind, okay? Because one of the major superpowers of serpent wisdom is the ability to see through the illusion and to have complete command over the subconscious mind, okay? And somebody who's tapped into that energy cannot be messed with through the hive mind, okay? If anything, they can redirect the hive mind. And that's the secret that they really don't want you to know, okay? But if you're holding on to guilt or shame, or if you're thinking that the serpent is bad and all that stuff, or that the serpent needs to be sacrificed, the serpent within you needs to be sacrificed, then you're leading to your own demise in that case. Now, that's not to say that the serpent hasn't been weaponized against us within the false matrix simulation. There is this concept of electrical serpents that can play out too, which is like basically a form of etheric machinery or etheric implants where there's like a false serpent that is of a more negative polarity. That sometimes a lot of folks who connect with the serpent lineage, they can have those attachments. And so that kind of works to make you a lot more confused, right? Into seeing the serpent as evil. Okay. So I'm not saying that there isn't some major polarity integration that will need to be done as it relates to the serpent. But once you get on the other side of that, there is a certain superpower that you unlock, okay? And this is really important for folks who identify with the serpentine power. If you are not able to deprogram all of that sacrifice program related to the serpent, all of that guilt related to the serpent, then you will stay within a lot of karmic loops, okay? Which will not benefit you within the times to come. So I actually have gone more in depth with this in a recent upload that I've done on the Patreon, the Genetic Path Cutter Patreon. By the way, thank you for the folks who have been joining the Patreon. I really appreciate y'all. I also really appreciate the Genetic Path Cutter interest that I've been getting as well with that. It's been really fun and very, very illuminating to do a lot of these readings and to go over a lot of this content with y'all. The recent thing I've uploaded to the Genetic Path Cutter Patreon is this thing around the 33rd parallel. the 33rd degree parallel and how it connects to the sacrifice of the serpent. If this conversation is at all of interest to you, the one that's being had right now, you might want to head on over to the Patreon, check out that 33rd degree parallel conversation. And to be quite honest, there's a lot of downloads that would be really supportive to you right now. Or also tapping in with that genetic path cutter DIY divination system that I have. I'll leave a link below to that as well, because then you'll be able to really start getting at where these sacrifice programs are being held and harnessed within your field, so you can free yourself of them, all right, and retrieve your power and activate some of those superhuman powers too, which are coming online. But first we got to do like a lot of clearing. It's kind of like, I always like to use the analogy of, when you tap into your multidimensionality, before you can like really like harness and access it, sometimes you got to clean up a lot of muck and junk. It's like if you go into a house that's been abandoned for years and years on end, you wouldn't just move in right away, right? You'd have to do a really big, deep clean, okay, and really fix up some stuff. And so a lot of this spiritual activation process is the cleaning, okay? It's that grunt work sort of stuff. And making sure you're clearing deferred karma, false debt is a huge part of your activation and awakening journey. So it's a lot more difficult to manifest and materialize what you want in the physical realm if you're weighed down by everybody's karmic baggage, right? And that leads me into another topic that I'm going into in depth on Patreon, which is around asteroids and how asteroids have been utilized as a form of cosmic and spiritual warfare, okay? And learning about the mechanics of asteroids in the false matrix simulation, and then starting to reprogram the way asteroids play out in your reality. Because remember, your reality is a hologram. It is a simulation. It is a video game, if you will, okay? This isn't like the true organic reality. So a lot of this path that we're on right now is shifting the hologram to be of a more organic nature. And that means getting through a lot of the programs, a lot of the artificial programs, a lot of the what are known as like mind slides or holographic inserts, mind control programs, a lot of stuff like that. And asteroids actually play a really big role into it. So y'all will have noticed that I've done a lot of work on this platform around transmuting the energy of different planets. And so you definitely want to start there. But once you have gotten a firm handle on that, you want to start going into the asteroids to get really, really specific. So on March 13th, Thursday, March 13th, I am having a private discussion with folks on Patreon as it relates to, or actually I'm calling it a teach-in, where you can basically learn how to start mapping out asteroids in your birth chart. You can start learning more about the mechanics of asteroids. They're very much of a mechanical type frequency, and how you can deprogram them and then reprogram them with more beneficent energies. This is very, very helpful to folks who have been the sacrifice, because what you'll find is a lot of the asteroids, the way the asteroids are playing out in your reality hologram, are going to mirror that sacrifice energy. So you're going to want to deprogram that and reprogram and alchemize that. And so this discussion is going to support folks with doing that. So if that's of interest to you, then come and see me on Patreon to get started with that. And you can also check out the subliminal I recently released as it relates to cosmic justice through transmutation of the asteroids, right? To start getting into that frequency. And then the last thing that I want to share with folks is a little bit around galactic astrology and how galactic astrology might be supportive to you right now with alchemizing the Serpent sacrifice program. Okay, so there are two star systems that you're going to want to look at in particular, because it's like our traditional astrology, that's just the 3D hologram. Like that's how you start shifting the 3D realm, is through, the basic solar system, planets, all that kind of stuff. But then there's a galactic element, and that's when we start getting into a lot of the multi-dimensional type stuff. And so, you would want to do a galactic astrology analysis. There is a free, if you go on Google, you'll find a free galactic astrology chart that you can use to like plug in your natal chart to look at what some of the galactic influences are. However, you will only find certain star alignments, okay? Because even the planets or the star systems that are recognized that's a very political thing too. There's a lot of like, let's just think about it, right? If we think about this from a colonization standpoint, there's a lot of like indigenous tribes that have been wiped out, or they've been taken off their land, or, their tribe is no longer valid or has any kind of political standing because the powers that be have decided that it is so. Okay, so they've changed the maps, they've changed legislation, that sort of thing, and have enacted even a paper genocide to erase certain histories, to erase certain lineages. As within, so without. If that's happening in the 3D, we want to also think about how that might be happening within the multidimensional space. So if you are interested in tapping into your galactic origins or galactic astrology, you also want to find the least popular star systems. And a lot of times, those are not going to be the ones that come up in the YouTube searches or the star seed marking searches. Those usually are like the established power structures, and they are noted for a reason. But there are many star systems that are absolutely not even recognized, that have been erased so that people don't know about them. Okay. And that's a very much of a political, strategic colonizer move. Okay. So you want to start looking at the star systems that you don't find a lot of information about. So for example, if you were to go on the galactic astrology chart, and if you were like looking to tap into different serpent lineages, there's one that's a little bit more popular that you would find information about, and that is called Hydra. That is HYDRA. And that is representative of like the serpent energy. Okay, so that is a prominent star seed marking that would show that there would be like some direct serpent line energy that you would want to alchemize. And then also it's important to know there are different serpent lines. Okay, there's not just one serpent line. All right, but Hydra's more published, it's more noteworthy, it's more recognizable. Okay. But there's another star constellation there's actually not a lot of information about, but it's starting to come more online. And I think it's because we are in a time when a lot of serpentine power is being activated. This star system is called the Serpens star system. That is spelled SERPENS, Serpens. Okay, and I'm going to put a link to some more information about that, and I'll put in the description, I will put the star seed markings for the Serpent star system. So if you wanted to see if it's in alignment with your birth chart, if you have the Serpents, if you have a connection to the Serpent star system, then you can check on that below. It does, one thing I will say is if you are of the Pluto and Scorpio generation, if you have a Pluto and Scorpio marking in your chart, then it's a lot more likely, I'm not going to say it's guaranteed, but it's a lot more likely that you will have a connection to the Serpens star system. So for Pluto and Scorpio folks, check that out. And so there's a reason why there's a lot of Pluto and Scorpio folks incarnated at this time. It's to bring in that reactivation of the serpentine energy. And there's a lot of karma to alchemize. There's a lot of trauma to alchemize. Even people who have the Pluto and Scorpio marking, those are the folks that grew up during the crack era. They grew up in a time of a lot of violence, of a lot of broken families, of a lot of trauma in the households. Okay. And there's a reason for that. That was a very certain frequency that a lot of those folks were coming to transmute onto this planet. So, you would want to check out Hydra to see if Hydra is of a marking for you, or the Serpens. And then you would want to work to alchemize that energy. That doesn't mean that you just all of a sudden are like, I'm a Serpent starseed and I'm going to channel beings from Serpens. Like, I've mentioned this in downloads on Patreon, and I'll be sharing this more on my common YouTube page, that you want to be really careful about the way you give your energy to different cosmic beings, okay? Because there's just been a lot of gaslighting that has been done as it relates to humanity and different beings that we're encouraged to work with. And a lot of times there's larger multidimensional energy harvesting and trafficking schemes that are going on that we kind of need to nip in the bud and retrieve our energy from as well. So if you have a serpent marking or if you have a hydra marking, you would want to really work to alchemize that before you would even think about connecting with that star system in a deeper way. You would want to clean house energetically first, okay, to retrieve your power from certain things. Because if there's sacrifice programs happening in the 3D, which we know there is, I gave you all some examples, well, then there would also be those same sacrifice programs playing out within a multidimensional framework as within, so without. Okay, so that's kind of where I want to end it today. So this is for folks who are specifically looking to transmute the sacrifice program, who know that they're connected to different serpentine lineages, but they felt like they've had a weird internal battle as it relates to the serpent. This message is for you. If you're interested in diving deeper in the concept of multidimensional alchemy, I am doing 3-month, 6-month, and 9-month coaching journeys with folks. You can check out my website to learn more information about that and how to connect with me as it relates to that. Or if you are interested in a one-time reading, you can check out my genetic path cutter readings and work life freedom readings as well. So sending y'all lots of love, joy, and peace until we meet again.